The sun dipped below the Parisian skyline, casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets. Tourists and locals alike bustled through the city, unaware of the malevolent force lurking beneath their feet. The catacombs of Paris, a sprawling network of tunnels and ossuaries, held secrets that had remained buried for centuries. But now, a series of unexplained disappearances and gruesome deaths had forced the French government to take action. Dr. Eliza Radcliffe, a renowned paranormal investigator, stood at the entrance to the catacombs, her breath misting in the cool evening air. Her reputation for uncovering the truth behind supernatural phenomena had led to a summons from the highest levels of government. As she adjusted her equipment, thermal cameras, EVP recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors, she couldn't shake the feeling that this investigation would be unlike any other. "Are you ready for this, Eliza?" Inspector Marcel Dubois asked, his voice a low rumble. Dubois was a seasoned police detective with a reputation for solving the most perplexing cases. His skepticism of the paranormal was well known, but recent events had left him with little choice but to seek out unconventional expertise. "As ready as I'll ever be," Eliza replied, meeting his gaze. She could see the doubt in his eyes, but also a flicker of something else. Perhaps fear, or a desperate hope that she might succeed where others had failed. The rest of the team gathered around, their faces a mix of determination and anxiety. Lucas Boucher, the tech specialist, was busy calibrating the spectral analyzers. His quick mind and innovative designs had earned him a place on many high-profile investigations. Camille Dupont, the historian, was poring over maps and ancient texts, seeking clues to the mysteries they were about to confront. Isabelle Moreau, a gifted medium, stood apart from the group, her eyes closed as she attuned herself to the energies of the catacombs. "We need to move quickly," Eliza said, her voice firm. "Once we're inside, we'll set up a base camp and begin our initial sweep. Stay close and keep your wits about you. The catacombs are a maze, and it's easy to get lost down there." With a nod of agreement, the team descended into the darkness. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, the oppressive silence broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the distant drip of water. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine, but she pressed on, her determination unwavering. They reached a large chamber and set up their equipment. Thermal cameras scanned the walls, and EVP recorders were placed at strategic points. Lucas monitored the spectral analyzers, watching for any signs of paranormal activity. Camille began documenting the ancient symbols etched into the stone, while Isabelle stood in the center of the room, her face serene as she reached out with her senses. "This place feels wrong," Isabelle whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's a darkness here, something ancient and malevolent." Eliza exchanged a glance with Dubois. His skepticism was evident, but he remained silent, his eyes scanning the shadows. As they worked, the tension in the air grew palpable, the sense of foreboding deepening with each passing moment. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and a cold wind swept through the chamber. The equipment beeped and whirred, indicating a spike in paranormal activity. Eliza's heart raced as she activated her EVP recorder, hoping to capture any communication from the spirits. A faint whisper filled the air, barely discernible but unmistakable. "Leave this place," it said, the voice filled with an otherworldly echo. "This ground is cursed." Lucas's eyes widened as he checked the spectral analyzer. "We're picking up multiple entities," he said, his voice tinged with alarm. "They're all around us." Eliza's mind raced. They had expected to encounter spirits, but the sheer number and intensity of the readings were beyond anything she had anticipated. She turned to Isabelle, who was now visibly trembling, her eyes wide with terror. "They're coming," Isabelle said, her voice a desperate plea. "We need to leave now." But before they could react, shadowy figures began to materialize around them. The temperature dropped further, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. Crawlers, distorted human-like entities that moved on all fours with unnatural agility, emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "Stay together," Eliza shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. "Form a circle and keep the equipment between us and them." The team huddled together, their backs against each other as the crawlers circled them. Dubois drew his firearm, though Eliza doubted its effectiveness against such entities. The tension was palpable, each member of the team acutely aware of the danger they faced. Eliza activated a high-frequency audio device designed to disrupt paranormal entities. The crawlers recoiled, their forms flickering as if struggling to maintain their presence. Taking advantage of the momentary reprieve, Eliza led the team towards a narrow passageway, their only hope of escape. As they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, the sense of dread grew stronger. The walls seemed to close in, and the oppressive silence was broken only by their ragged breaths and the distant whispers of the entities pursuing them. They stumbled upon a small alcove and took refuge, their hearts pounding as they tried to regain their composure. "We need to regroup and come up with a new plan," Eliza said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We can't let them drive us out before we've uncovered the truth." Du Bois nodded, his face grim. "Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. Those things are dangerous, and we can't afford to lose anyone." The team huddled together, their determination renewed. They had come seeking answers, and despite the terror that lurked in the darkness, they were resolved to uncover the secrets of the haunted chambers of Paris. As they prepared to continue their investigation, they knew that the true test of their courage and skill lay ahead, in the depths of the catacombs where the ancient malevolence waited to confront them. The catacombs' claustrophobic passageways seemed to stretch infinitely into darkness. Eliza Radcliffe led the team through the damp, narrow corridors, each step echoing eerily off the ancient stone walls. Their initial encounter with the supernatural entities had shaken them, but it also fueled their determination. They had come too far to turn back now. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Inspector Marcel Du Bois asked, his voice hushed. He gripped his flashlight tightly, the beam cutting through the oppressive blackness. "According to the maps and historical records, we should be nearing a central chamber," Camille Dupont replied, her eyes scanning the faded markings on the walls. "This area was used for various rituals and ceremonies. If there's any place where we might find answers, it's here." Lucas Boucher adjusted his equipment, monitoring the spectral analyzers for any signs of paranormal activity. "I'm picking up faint readings," he said, his voice tense. "We're definitely not alone down here." Eliza nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The catacombs were filled with countless spirits, but the entities they had encountered were unlike any she had seen before. She glanced at Isabelle Moreau, who walked beside her, eyes wide and alert. "Isabelle, are you sensing anything specific?" Eliza asked. Isabelle closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. "There's a presence here, something ancient and powerful. It's watching us, waiting." As they approached a large, open chamber, the temperature dropped suddenly. The team paused, their breaths visible in the frigid air. The oppressive silence was broken only by the faint drip of water from the ceiling and the distant, echoing whispers of the spirits that surrounded them. Eliza signaled for the team to set up their equipment. They placed thermal cameras and EVP recorders at strategic points around the chamber, each device calibrated to detect and document paranormal phenomena. Lucas monitored the spectral analyzers, his eyes darting between the screens. "I'm getting some strong readings," Lucas said, his voice tinged with excitement and fear. "Multiple entities, and they're getting closer." The team formed a tight circle, their backs against each other as they prepared for whatever might come. Eliza activated the high-frequency audio device, hoping it would provide some protection against the entities. The air grew colder still, and the oppressive energy intensified. Suddenly, shadowy figures began to materialize around them. The crawlers, distorted human-like entities with elongated limbs and glowing eyes, emerged from the darkness, their movements unnaturally swift and agile. The team members' hearts pounded in their chests as the creatures circled them, their malevolent gazes fixed on the intruders. "Stay calm," Eliza whispered, her voice steady. "Remember our training. Focus on the equipment and document everything." Isabel's eyes widened in terror as she clutched her amulet, a protective charm she always carried. "They're trying to communicate," she said, her voice trembling. "But their words are filled with anger and pain." Lucas captured a series of EVPs, the recordings crackling with otherworldly whispers. Camille strained to translate the ancient language, her face pale as she deciphered the messages. "They speak of betrayal and suffering," she said. "They were summoned here, bound by dark rituals." As the team documented the entities, one of the crawlers lunged towards them. Du Bois fired his weapon, the gunshot echoing through the chamber, but the bullets passed harmlessly through the entity. The crawler recoiled momentarily, its form flickering, but it quickly recovered and continued its advance. Eliza activated the high-frequency audio device, and the crawlers hesitated, their forms shimmering as if struggling to maintain their presence. Seizing the moment, she led the team towards a narrow passageway on the far side of the chamber. "Move now," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team sprinted through the passageway, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The oppressive energy pursued them, the whispers growing louder and more insistent. They stumbled upon a small alcove and took refuge, their breaths ragged as they tried to regain their composure. "We need to regroup and come up with a new plan," Eliza said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We can't let them drive us out before we've uncovered the truth." Du Bois nodded, his face grim. "Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. Those things are dangerous, and we can't afford to lose anyone." The team huddled together, their determination renewed. Lucas checked his equipment, confirming that the spectral readings were concentrated in the central chamber they had just fled. "Whatever's down here, it's tied to that place," he said. "We need to figure out what those rituals were and how to stop whatever they unleashed." Camille retrieved her notes, her hand shaking slightly as she scanned the ancient texts. "There are references to a powerful demon bound by blood and sacrifice," she said. "If we're going to confront this thing, we'll need to perform a cleansing ritual of our own." Isabel nodded, her fear giving way to resolve. "I can help with that," she said. "But we need to be prepared. This won't be easy." Eliza looked around at her team, their faces etched with determination. "We're in this together," she said. "We came here for answers, and we're not leaving until we've uncovered the truth and put an end to this haunting." With their plans set, the team prepared to venture back into the darkness. The haunted chambers of Paris awaited, their secrets guarded by ancient, malevolent forces. But Eliza and her team were ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead, determined to bring light to the darkest corners of the catacombs. The air in the catacombs grew colder, the shadows lengthening as the team ventured further into the labyrinthine tunnels. Their previous encounter with the crawlers had left them shaken but resolute. They moved cautiously, each step echoing ominously in the subterranean stillness. "This should be the central chamber," Camille Dupont said, consulting her map and ancient texts. The walls around them were adorned with more of the cryptic symbols she had been studying. These symbols indicate that this place was used for rituals long before it became an ossuary. Eliza Radcliffe scanned the room with her flashlight, her eyes narrowing as she took in the grim surroundings. "We're looking for any sign of the rituals that were performed here. If we can understand what they did, we might be able to reverse it." Inspector Marcel Dubois, ever the skeptic, nonetheless kept his hand close to his firearm. "Let's hope we don't encounter more of those things," he muttered. Lucas Boucher set up his spectral analyzers and thermal cameras around the chamber. "I'm picking up some strong readings," he said, his voice tense. "Whatever was summoned here, it's still around." Isabelle Moreau, the medium, closed her eyes and reached out with her senses. Her face twisted in concentration, then fear. "There's something here, something ancient and evil. It's watching us." As the team began their investigation, Eliza and Camille examined the symbols and inscriptions on the walls. "These symbols," Camille said, pointing to a particularly intricate design, "indicate a summoning ritual. Blood sacrifice, chanting in an ancient tongue. This was not just a burial site. They were calling something forth." "Do you think they succeeded?" Eliza asked, her voice hushed. Camille's expression was grim. "I think they did more than that. I think they bound it here." A sudden chill swept through the chamber, causing the team's breath to mist in the air. Lucas's spectral analyzer beeped frantically. "We're not alone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged, tall with eyes that glowed like embers. Its presence exuded a malevolence that made the air thick with dread. It was the Shadow Man, an entity of pure darkness. "Stay together," Eliza ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "Lucas, the high-frequency device now." Lucas activated the device, but the Shadow Man barely flinched. It moved closer, its eyes burning with ancient hatred. Du Bois fired his weapon, but the bullets passed through the entity harmlessly. The team backed away slowly, trying to keep the Shadow Man at bay. "We need to find a way to banish it," Camille said urgently. "The ritual must have a reversal." Isabel, her eyes wide with terror, began chanting in an ancient language. The Shadow Man paused, as if recognizing the words. "Keep going, Isabel," Eliza encouraged. "It's working." The air around them crackled with energy as Isabel's chant grew louder. The Shadow Man recoiled, its form flickering like a dying flame. But then, from the depths of the chamber, Other entities began to emerge. Crawlers, skinwalkers, and other twisted spirits. They were surrounded. "We need to hold them off," Dubois shouted, trying to maintain order amidst the chaos. "Eliza, Camille, figure out the reversal ritual." Eliza and Camille frantically searched the inscriptions for clues. "Here," Camille exclaimed, pointing to a series of symbols. "This looks like the counter ritual. We need to chant these words and use a consecrated item." "I have an amulet," Isabel said, her voice strained but determined. "It's been blessed by a priest. It should work." As the entities closed in, Eliza and Camille began chanting the counter ritual, their voices joining Isabel's. The words echoed through the chamber, filled with ancient power. The entities shrieked in pain, their forms flickering and fading. The Shadow Man, the strongest of them all, fought back fiercely. It lunged at Eliza, but Dubois stepped in, his protective instincts overriding his fear. The entity's touch left him gasping, his skin searing with cold. "Keep chanting," Dubois urged, his voice pained. "We can do this." The room pulsed with energy as the ritual reached its climax. The amulet in Isabel's hand glowed with a bright, pure light. The Shadow Man screamed, a sound of unearthly agony, and began to disintegrate. One by one, the other entities followed, their forms dissolving into the ether. As the last echoes of the chant faded, the chamber fell silent. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. The team collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. "We did it," Eliza said, her voice barely a whisper. "We actually did it." Dubois, nursing his injured hand, nodded. "I can't believe it, but you were right. All of you." Camille smiled weakly. "We still need to understand exactly what happened here. There's so much more to uncover." Isabel, her face pale but serene, looked around the chamber. "The spirits are at rest for now, but we need to ensure this place remains protected." As they gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the catacombs, the team knew that their work was far from over. The haunted chambers of Paris had revealed their secrets, but the cost had been high. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the shadows would always be there, lurking just beyond the light. They climbed the steps back to the surface, each member of the team forever changed by their ordeal. The city of Paris carried on above them, blissfully unaware of the ancient battle that had been fought below. But Eliza and her team knew that the true test of their resolve lay in the knowledge they carried with them, and in the promise they had made to protect the world from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. Emerging from the catacombs into the pale light of dawn, the team was met with a city that seemed blissfully unaware of the terrors lurking beneath its surface. But for Dr. Eliza Radcliffe and her team, the nightmare was far from over. Each of them bore the physical and emotional scars of their encounter, and they knew they had only scratched the surface of the malevolent forces they faced. "We need to rest and regroup," Eliza said, her voice filled with the weariness of their ordeal. "We'll reconvene at the hotel and go over our findings. There has to be something we missed." Inspector Marcel Dubois, his hands still bandaged from his encounter with the Shadow Man, nodded. "Agreed. We can't let our guard down, not even for a moment." Back at the hotel, the team gathered in a conference room, the tension palpable. Lucas Boucher spread out the spectral data on the table, while Camille Dupont reviewed the ancient text she had collected. Isabelle Moreau sat quietly, her eyes closed as she tried to attune herself to any lingering spiritual presence. "We need to figure out how to permanently seal whatever it is that's down there," Lucas said, his voice strained. "The counter-ritual worked, but it was only temporary. The Shadow Man and the other entities will come back." "Camille, what did you find in those texts?" Eliza asked. Camille looked up from her notes, her expression grim. The rituals performed in the catacombs were meant to bind a powerful demon. This demon was summoned by a secret society in the 17th century. They believed it would grant them power and immortality. Instead, it unleashed chaos and death. "Do we know the identity of the demon?" Dubois asked, leaning forward. "Yes," Camille replied. "The texts refer to it as Azazel, an ancient demon of immense power. The society tried to contain it after realizing their mistake, but they only managed to trap it within the catacombs. It's been feeding on the souls of the dead ever since." Eliza felt a chill run down her spine. "We need to find a way to permanently banish Azazel. But how?" Isabel opened her eyes, her voice soft but firm. "There is a way, but it will require great sacrifice. The texts mention a purification ritual, one that can sever Azazel's connection to our world. But it requires a willing vessel to channel the demon's energy and then sacrifice themselves to close the gateway. The room fell silent as the weight of Isabel's words sank in. The team knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger and unimaginable sacrifice. But they also knew they had no choice. "We need to prepare," Eliza said, her voice resolute. "Lucas, get the equipment ready. Camille, keep studying those texts. We need to know every detail about the purification ritual. Du Bois, gather any additional support we might need. We can't do this alone." As the team sprang into action, Eliza pulled Isabel aside. "Are you sure about this? The risk is unimaginable." Isabel nodded, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "I am. We have to stop Azazel, no matter the cost." Hours later, the team descended once more into the catacombs, their faces set with grim determination. They navigated the twisting tunnels, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. The air grew colder as they neared the central chamber, the oppressive energy palpable. As they entered the chamber, they found the symbols and inscriptions glowing faintly, pulsing with a dark energy. The temperature dropped further, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the distant whispers of the entities that lurked in the shadows. "We need to set up a perimeter," Eliza instructed. "Lucas, place the spectral analyzers around the chamber. Camille, mark the symbols for the ritual. Du Bois, keep an eye out for any disturbances." The team worked quickly, their movements precise and deliberate. Isabel stood in the center of the chamber, her eyes closed as she began to chant in the ancient language. The air around her crackled with energy, the symbols on the walls glowing brighter in response. As the ritual progressed, the oppressive energy intensified. The shadowy figures of the crawlers and skinwalkers began to emerge, their eyes glowing with malevolence. Du Bois fired warning shots, but the entities seemed unaffected, their forms flickering as they advanced. "Stay focused," Eliza shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Isabel, keep chanting." Isabel's voice grew louder, her words resonating with ancient power. The entities recoiled, their forms flickering and distorting as the ritual took effect. But then, from the depths of the chamber, a new figure emerged, Azazel himself. The demon's presence was overwhelming, a towering figure of darkness and fire. Its eyes burned with an unholy light as it fixed its gaze on Isabel. "You dare challenge me?" Azazel's voice echoed through the chamber, filled with rage and contempt. Isabel's chant faltered, but she stood her ground. "We banish you, Azazel. You have no place in this world." Azazel laughed, a sound that sent shivers down the team's spines. "You are but mortals. You cannot hope to defeat me." But Isabel continued the chant, her voice steady despite the terror that gripped her. The air around her shimmered with energy, the symbols on the walls glowing brighter still. Azazel roared in fury, his form flickering as the purification ritual took hold. "We need to protect Isabel," Eliza shouted. "Form a circle around her." The team moved quickly, creating a barrier between Isabel and the advancing entities. Lucas activated the high-frequency audio device, the sound waves disrupting the entities' forms. Camille and Du Bois held their ground, their faces set with determination. As Isabel's chant reached its climax, the air around her pulsed with energy. The amulet in her hand glowed with a bright, pure light, its power channeling through her. Azazel screamed, a sound of unearthly agony, as his form began to disintegrate. "You will not prevail," Azazel roared, his voice filled with fury and desperation. "I will return." With a final burst of energy, the ritual reached its peak. The chamber was filled with blinding light, and Azazel's form shattered into nothingness. The shadowy entities dissolved, their presence banished by the purification ritual. As the light faded, the chamber fell silent. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and peace. The team collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," Eliza said, her voice barely a whisper. "We actually did it." Isabel, her face pale but serene, smiled weakly. "Azazel is gone. The catacombs are at peace." Du Bois, nursing his injured hand, nodded. "We need to make sure it stays that way. The world can't know what really happened here." As they gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the catacombs, the team knew that their work was far from over. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the shadows would always be there, lurking just beyond the light. They climbed the steps back to the surface, each member of the team forever changed by their ordeal. The city of Paris carried on above them, blissfully unaware of the ancient battle that had been fought below. But Eliza and her team knew that the true test of their resolve lay in the knowledge they carried with them, and in the promise they had made to protect the world from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. Back in the hotel conference room, the team sat in a heavy silence, the weight of their ordeal pressing down on them. The purification ritual had succeeded in banishing Azazel, but the cost had been high. Isabel Moreau's eyes remained closed, her body still as she rested, the strain of channeling the demon's energy evident. Dr. Eliza Radcliffe looked around at her team, her heart filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "We did it," she said softly, breaking the silence. "We faced Azazel and won. But we need to ensure that what happened here stays buried." Inspector Marcel Dubois, his hands still bandaged from his encounter with the Shadow Man, nodded. "I'll make sure the authorities are kept in the dark." Officially, this was an investigation into structural instability in the catacombs. Camille Dupont, her eyes tired but determined, added, "The texts mention other rituals and locations. Azazel might be gone, but there could be more like him. We need to be vigilant." Lucas Boucher adjusted his equipment, checking the data one last time. The spectral readings confirm that the entities are gone, but we should monitor the area for any residual activity. We can't afford to let our guard down. Isabel stirred, opening her eyes. "I felt the energy shift when Azazel was banished. The catacombs are at peace, but there's a lingering presence. Something is watching us, waiting." Eliza's expression grew serious. "We need to document everything and ensure that the knowledge we gained is safeguarded. Camille, compile the texts and translations. Lucas, back up all the spectral data. Dubois, coordinate with the local authorities to keep this quiet." As the team worked, a sense of unease settled over them. They had faced an ancient evil and survived, but the battle had taken its toll. The catacombs of Paris might be at peace, but the world was still filled with unknown dangers. A week later, the team reconvened in Eliza's office at the university. The room was filled with maps, ancient texts, and spectral data, a testament to their relentless pursuit of the truth. The atmosphere was tense, each member acutely aware of the sacrifices they had made. "Let's review what we've learned," Eliza began, addressing the team. "The purification ritual worked, but it was only a temporary solution. We need to find a permanent way to protect these sites." Camille nodded. "The texts indicate that there are other locations where similar rituals were performed. We need to identify and secure these places to prevent any future summoning attempts." Dubois leaned forward, his expression grim. "We also need to be prepared for the possibility that other entities like Azazel might already be here. We can't afford to be caught off guard." Isabel, her face still pale from the ordeal, spoke softly. "I've been sensing a presence, something ancient and powerful. It's as if the banishment of Azazel awakened other forces. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Lucas adjusted his glasses, his eyes scanning the data. "Our equipment can help us monitor for any anomalies, but we need more resources. We can't do this alone." Eliza nodded. "I'll reach out to other experts in the field. We need a network of allies to help us. This isn't just about the catacombs. It's about protecting the world from the unseen threats that lurk in the shadows." As the team discussed their plans, a knock on the door interrupted them. A tall, thin man in a dark suit entered the room, his presence commanding attention. He introduced himself as Agent Thomas Carter from the National Security Agency, NSA. "We've been monitoring your activities," Agent Carter said, his voice calm but authoritative. "The government is aware of the supernatural threats you've encountered, and we want to offer our assistance." Eliza exchanged glances with her team, a mixture of relief and suspicion in their eyes. "Why now?" she asked. "Why is the government getting involved?" "Because the threats you faced are real and dangerous," Carter replied. "We've been tracking similar incidents worldwide, and we believe there is a coordinated effort to unleash these entities. We need your expertise to help us stop them." The team listened in stunned silence as Carter outlined the government's knowledge of supernatural activities. He revealed that the NSA and CIA had been tracking occult groups and unexplained phenomena for years, but the recent surge in activity had prompted them to take more direct action. We want to form a task force, Carter continued. A collaboration between your team and our resources. Together, we can identify and neutralize these threats before they become catastrophic. Eliza felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The offer of support was tempting, but the involvement of the government added a layer of complexity. We'll need to discuss this as a team, she said finally. But if we do agree, we need to ensure that our work remains focused on protecting people, not exploiting these phenomena for other purposes. Carter nodded. Agreed. Our priority is the safety and security of the public. I'll give you time to consider the proposal. Contact me when you're ready. As Carter left the room, the team sat in silence, processing the implications of his offer. They had faced an ancient evil and survived, but the battle against the darkness was far from over. We have a choice to make, Eliza said, breaking the silence. Do we accept their help and risk losing control of our mission, or do we continue on our own, knowing the dangers we face? Isabel spoke first, her voice steady. We need all the help we can get, but we also need to set clear boundaries. This is about protecting people, not about power or control. Camille nodded in agreement. If we can maintain our integrity and focus, this partnership could be our best chance to uncover and stop these threats. Du Bois leaned back, his expression thoughtful. I'll work with them, but I'll also keep an eye on their intentions. We can't afford to be blindsided. Lucas adjusted his equipment, his face set with determination. Let's do it, but on our terms. Eliza looked around at her team, her heart filled with pride and resolve. Then it settled. We'll accept their help, but we'll make sure we stay true to our mission. We're in this together, and we'll face whatever comes next as a team. With their decision made, the team prepared for the next phase of their journey. The haunted chambers of Paris had been just the beginning. There were other sites to investigate, other entities to confront, and a world to protect from the unseen threats that lurked in the shadows. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to embark on their next mission, Eliza knew that the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but she also knew that they were ready. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and they would continue to fight, no matter the cost. The battle against the supernatural was far from over, but with the support of the NSA and their unwavering determination, Eliza and her team were ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The world might never know the true extent of the threats they faced, but they would continue to protect it, one battle at a time.